welcome everyone to our second workshop of the Youth Leadership Experience Program, and welcome AIESEC Alumni Australia to the series of A Talk designed to challenge and inspire the youth during this pandemic. This workshop is proudly brought to you by AIESEC in Monash in partnership with AIESEC Alumni Australia. Once again, welcome you all to our event today, and we hope that you will enjoy the event as much as we did organizing it. Before we start, I have some expectation for our space today. So be present and respect the space. Keep your camera on. Make sure you are not muted before speaking and stay muted when you are not talking. Be proactive and active in our activities, and don't be afraid to speak up in the Q&A session. So for today's agenda, we will have the introduction to clarify more about our program. Then we'll come to the main session, Communication in the Virtual World, presented by our guest speaker about how to advance your communication skills in the virtual environment. If you have any question, there will be a Q&A session afterward, and stay tuned till the end because we have some exciting announcement for the upcoming event. About us, I believe that you have already had in mind what our program is about. So these workshops are part of AIESEC Youth Leadership Experience Initiative, and in partnership with AIESEC Alumni. By providing the relevant and practical learning experiences, we are striving to create a community connecting like-minded individuals who are interested in developing their leadership skills. And we are currently in the second topic, communication in virtual environments. And we will look at the ways that we can do to communicate effectively in the online platform. So let's get to the exciting part. I would like to introduce Ophenia Liang, our amazing guest speaker today. So Ophenia is the director and co-founder of Digital Crew. So for you who hasn't known about Digital Crew, it is an Australian fastest growing, multi-award winning, multilingual digital marketing consultancy. And she has gained professional and networking experiences from her marketing positions in organizations such as AIESEC, Cactus Communication, and Society One before starting Digital Crew. From her experiences, she has gained knowledge on operating business through online platforms, and this, coupled with her remarkable communication skill, makes Ophenia a highly sought after speaker and a true orator in both the physical and virtual environment. So Ophenia, thank you so much for joining us today, and without further ado, let's get started to our second workshop, and I will pass on to Ophenia.
Hi, thank you, Cindy, for the kind introduction. Thank you. And I think today we have to be aware of time because I just noticed that David needs to get to his girlfriend before curfew. So it's very important that we finish on time today. Wouldn't want to stand in your way, right? So yes, thank you for inviting me. So this topic for the next about 45 minutes, we're going to talk about business communication in a virtual environment. So I believe the reason I was invited is because I run a company, which is called Digital Crew, that we have 7 offices in 5 different countries. So virtual communication is literally a day-to-day things. It's part of our work, and we are familiar with doing so even before the pandemic. And I constantly hire team members who I've never met in person. But that, having said that, I guess after this whole session, I would still emphasize in-person communication is still very, very important. It's way more important than virtual communication. Can we, next slide? So next slide, please. So let's set the scene about what are we, no, the one before. So let's set the scene. What are we talking about as virtual communication? So this the next 40 minutes, it's about communication in a business sense. So it's more professional, and it's in a virtual communication. So what we usually use is what written communication, writing emails or messages, and or making phone calls, or doing video calls. And what is that different is something is significant is missing from pre-COVID compared to pre-COVID, meaning that we can actually sit down in the same meeting room and do a presentation where you can express a lot more just with the presence of yourself. And we had been in, I have personally flown 18 hours to get to India to pitch for a client, which is pretty normal pre-COVID, but right now, if you think about it, it's pretty amazing. In a way, in COVID, we kind of learned that maybe some of those flights, some of those long flights to get to just do one meeting could be safe, and we save the environment as well, and as well as cost. But virtual communication has becoming a daily life happening. You have to be able to communicate the same message without being there physically. So there are a few things to be aware of is when you're writing, when you're doing written communication, there's a high chance, especially if you're from a different culture, there's a high chance that words will be lost in translation, even if you're both reading and writing in English. And sometimes in a work environment, if any of you were working, raise your hands. It's very easy to get into an email fight or email argument with a colleague. And a lot of that could be simply resolved by just picking up the phone or arranging a video call to just explain things, and that would just be solved very quickly. And just remember that and try that. So I always encourage my team member to, if you can if you can solve a problem by doing a phone call or video call, do that instead of writing an email. But of course, writing email is still very important. There are things like contracts or meeting minutes and all sorts of things that needs to be written, and there's reason for that to be written. So that is the first thing about virtual communication and the physical communication. You have barriers. You are not able to sense the other person who are in the same room. So that is a very big barrier nowadays with current situation, especially in Melbourne. So, but in theory, the basic things of communication are still the same. Next slide, please. The basic things about communication is still the same. You still need the same skill to communicate in a virtual sense. So here are some of the highlights. I should point out before we go ahead with this is, this is not a kind of a formal training. You would not receive a certificate after this session. It's more about sharing experience and from my work, basically. So here are the 7 skills in communication, which apply virtual or non-virtual, that you should be developing yourself for. So number 1 is clarity of messaging. The ability to express a very complex issue in very simple language. That is a very skill high in demand. For example, why would Neil Tyson be so famous? It's because he talked about astronology, it's talk about space in a very simple way that anyone can understand. So how do you make clarity how do you maintain clarity when you're communicating? It's a skill to develop first. Then the second one is checking whether everybody are on the same page, checking your understanding. It's not just, it's both party. Checking whether yourself understand the subject, the object that you're talking about, and also checking whether the other party understand what you are trying to convey or the other way. So how do you do that? It's more about rephrasing. That's a skill that we all need to do in academic writing, rephrasing, right? So if you ask the other party to repeat in their word what you just discussed, or you, by checking whether you understand it correctly, you rephrase it to the other party and making sure that that is the case. So that is the skills, number 2. Number 3 is turn taking. You need to be able to convey things in different angle and also give other chances to express what they are talking about. Let other people talk. Don't be the person who in the room that takes the most amount of time talking, except when you're the only speaker, like now. Probably a bad example. But that makes sure you can relate to others. Now, point 4 is listening. You should spend more time in understanding what the other party trying to tell you than just spend the time talking. The best salesperson spend 80% of their time listening and only 20% of their time actually selling, actually talking about the benefit and what are the solutions that they can solve for the other party. And listening with a cultural context as well. Since we are on the AIESEC event, we're multicultural and we are cross-cultural as well. Listen with a cultural context. I've got an example. There was once I was doing a sales meeting. I was trying to sell the other party, and in Japan. So I was in with a local Japanese associate, and then we went into this company. We're trying to pitch and sell them our service, and alongside the entire meeting, it seems great. Everybody's smiling and they're asking questions. They're responding to what we're talking about. So when I come out of the meeting, I'm like, yes, this sales will be done. Like this deal will be done. But then my Japanese associate actually told me that, nah, you have no chance in this deal at all. So it's a lot of cultural cues that I miss, because simply I'm not a Japanese and I don't know the Japanese business culture enough to pick up those cues. So cultural context, and also I always encourage my team member to understand each other's culture when they're communicating as well. For example, my Chinese team member communicating with my Indian team member is always a challenge. So sometimes we would actually do cultural sharing sessions to understand each other's culture. And for example, in India, we just had a festival 2 weeks ago, and then we invite them to share what is that to the whole team, so that we have more cultural understanding with each other. And also, there's another thing in this point is, for example, in some of the culture, people tend not to say no to you, but you need to read between the lines and understand, is that really a no? So for example, some of my team member would never say no to me, but then I would need to understand, okay, that basically means a no, so I shouldn't be pushing them anymore. So the next point is choosing the right method. So this choosing the right method is not just what kind of channel to communicate, whether you use email or you use a phone call or text or video, depending on the subject that you need to use to. So sometimes you use multiple channels. You send an email and then you do a phone call to follow up, and then maybe you need to arrange a meeting to get to get all the stakeholders in one place where you can present and push the idea. So it really depends. And my 80-year-old aunt only preferred to receive a letter. So I either go there in person to talk to her, or I send her a letter. So in order to convey your message, you need to choose the right combination of channels. Self-aware is more about understanding what your stand and how do you influence other from where you're standing from. Appropriate body language, I think that is a very basic. We don't have to elaborate too much. Just I'm sure we won't do anything out of the ordinary in nowadays, but it is something to be aware of. It's a really personal choice. So the whole thing about building your communication skill is about building relationships. There are many reasons that you need to have better communication skills. Sometimes some communication are just transactional. You go to the shop, you go to the cafe, you just want to get your cappuccino and then you get out. That is a transactional communication. But even though nowadays anyone could be connected to anyone, I talk to my barista that to the cafe that I always go to, and I told them there was once I told them I'm looking for a painter to repaint the office, and then she recommended some good painter for me. So you can turn transactional conversation into a more in-depth conversation. But in a business sense, in a business scenario, your communication goal is to build relationship with your colleagues, with your other stakeholder, with your clients. You always want to build a relationship, because if you have a good relationship with your client, you are more likely to get repeat business. If you have good relationship with your team, with your manager, you are more likely to get that promotion that you want. And also by building relationship, that means later on, if you want, when you're in a corporate environment, a lot of things are about influence. So if you want to assert influence, you need relationship. You need people to help you. People only help people who they know. So keep in mind, to develop all these skills, your objective is to build relationships. Next. So I'm sure if some of you study business degree, you would know a lot of theory about communication or media, or how to structure different methodologies and how to do all of that. So I'm not here to talk about a particular theory by a particular scholar. Here is more about what I find useful in a business scenario that we deal with day to day. The first point, be very clear and brief, but articulate when need to. It's so easy to forget that. Sometimes we receive an email from someone that it's like an essay. Try to avoid that. An email is to convey a message, simple. And if you can't articulate a problem in a few sentences, you need to question yourself, do I really understand the problem? So try to be brief, but depending on your audience, if they want clarification, yes, you articulate and tell them more. Point number 2, it never hurts to be polite, even in a virtual environment. It's very easy to forget. It's very, very easy to forget. For example, if you are writing an email, keep it professional. Keep all the professional words that you need to use, unless it's someone that you know very well, you're pals with them. Still, if it's a work email, try to keep it professional. Use the correct English, no grammar mistake. Don't use shortened words. Don't use trendy words. It's never too polite. You have to be polite, and even in video calls or phone calls, keep it professional in a business sense. Even in text messages, try to, in the Western world, we usually don't use SMS as a mean of a formal communication. So, but if you are talking to a colleague or if you're talking to a client on an SMS, then still try to keep it professional, because you never know, really. Any words could lead to any later on as evidence of something else or legal dispute. Hopefully that's not the case, but it's just keep that in mind. It's very easy to make that mistake. And be responsive. So because nowadays we can't see each other daily in the office and have expected timeline to respond. So don't wait too long. Even if something that you're not sure about, you need time to find out. So then respond and say, okay, I would need a day to find out the answer of this particular issue, but I will get back to you. So to make sure that the other party understand, you get the message, you're working on it. That is very important. And communicate progress. And that is something I find in people, in my own experience, that people early in their career tend to ignore or tend to not do so well. Is communicate progress. For example, if you are assigned a particular task and you plan to, say, your manager tell you, okay, let's finish this in 2 weeks. Don't keep silent in the whole 2 weeks. And in the end of the 2 weeks, and you tell the manager, I need another 2 weeks. That is not good. That is seriously not good. You communicate your progress. For example, week 1, I find out these issues. I need additional help in this. I'm not sure about this. You ask the question, be proactive, and tell, and whoever assign you that task, whoever you're working with, tell them, this is the problem I'm encountering. Can we work together, or can you give me more resource, or can you help me with it? And if you can't meet the deadline of the 2 weeks, tell in advance. Don't wait until the last day. And even if you can meet the deadline, there is no harm in telling in the first week and telling them, okay, I expect to finish this. I have no problem with this. I can finish next week. It's great. That is great, not just courtesy, but also that shows you're a responsible person and you have this task in control. So it's very important to keep communicating progress. Ask questions. It's never late to ask question, and it's never late to ask the wrong. There's no naive questions. It's expected as a junior person to ask questions. There's no dumb question, actually. By asking questions, show others that you care, show others that you understand to a certain degree, and show others that you still need help and where you would get the help. And that's how you would learn as well as a person. That's how you would grow, by asking questions and challenging, or even challenging the way of doing things. And because we are so familiar with messaging, Instagram or WhatsApp, and it's easy to confuse messaging with your friend versus messaging in a work environment. I don't care what you do in your personal life, but in your work environment, do not send like 20 messages, break them down. It's like, what is this? Why is that? Can I do this? Can I do that? In 20 messages. That is not nice. That is really not nice. No matter it's for your manager or for a colleague, that is not respecting their time as well. And you don't know what the other party is doing. You might be disturbing the other party. So try to condense them into one message, or try to write an email. Let's go back to the point, need to be polite. And last one, we're so familiar we're doing Zoom marathon every day nowadays. But I still sometimes find some people not respecting others by having good etiquette, you may say. It's try to have, for example, treat it as a meeting that you would go to face-to-face. Give that much respect to a video call. So put on some nice clothes. Makeup is optional, but presentable. Make sure yourself presentable. I know on TikTok, there's so many videos laughing about, like making fun about just dressing up on the top and then whatever you're wearing on the bottom is none of my concern. But be respect to the other party by presenting yourself well, and also be aware of what is in your background. Nobody wants to see your laundry. So there are virtual backgrounds where you can set up, and I can see some of you are on the beach, which is great. So that is really important. Turn on your camera, which is great. I'm so happy to see the housekeeping rule here is turn on your camera, because that's the least you can do is to show your face. It's to connect with the other party. Let's go back to the objective. You want to build relationship. You want to influence the other party. Then, without showing your face, how am I going to relate to who am I talking to? Very important. Try to mute yourself when you're not talking. That's another great housekeeping rule, but also keep in mind in other meeting as well. You don't know what's your background noise, what would happen in your background all of a sudden. Sometimes my Indian team member, because they are all stuck at home, they're still in quarantine, same like Melbourne. And some of them are living in 1-bedroom apartment for all of them, which is very common, by the way. Joint family living in India is very common. And 3 of the family member are working from home. So they're all trying to do video call for their work. So mute yourself when you're not speaking and try to find a reasonably quiet place, a corner to, it's the respect to the other party, whoever is with you. So enough about tips and tricks and all of that. I think we should put things into practice. So remember, we're talking about your communication. It's about building relationship. It's about building influence with the other party or whoever that you come in contact with. So people only relate to others by knowing who they are, or they share something in common, or they agree with something together. And how do you do that? It's storytelling. Now, this is not about you come up with, you write a story like Charles Dickens or Mark Twain or something like that. No, it's about telling story just about yourself or anything that you need to talk about. It's a storytelling, even in the business communication. And the ability to do that actually increase your ability to connect with others, because that shows who you are, because that gives other party things to relate to. So in this construct, this is actually a very simple construct of how you do storytelling, and that applies to any story writing as well, even in movies and films where the script writer, they use the same methodology, or even in children's book, they use the same methodology, which is character, conflict, struggle, and goal, which some of you might encounter in your communication subjects already. But here in business sense, usually the character is you or someone who are in the same team or in your company, or someone that you both know in common. So in here, building that character, it could be you, by the way. It's very important. That shows other people who you are so that they can relate to. Conflict, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a fight with someone else. It just means that something difficult happened, or there's a hiccup in the story. And then struggle is how do you try to figure out and solve the problem. And goal is what is the result of it. So this is just a construct of how do you tell a story. And why do we need that? It's because there is a saying that a lot of the business decision or creative discussions that come up with the brilliant ideas don't actually happen in the meeting room. They happen in coffee shops, they happen in common areas, they happen in lunch breaks. So when you are connecting with, in a business sense, connecting with someone else, or even doing a video call for business, before you get down to business, you usually try to connect with the other party And this would be a great tricks for you to break the ice if you haven't met the other party, or it's a great trick just to connect to your colleagues. So remember this construct: character, conflict, struggle, and go. Now we're going to go into a test case. We're going to try that ourselves. So we're going to tell a story in 1 minute. You only have 1 minute because for example, if you go into the lift and then you run into the CEO, you only have 30 seconds or a minute to impress them. So, or if you run into a colleague that you always want to talk to in the canteen, you only have 30 seconds. So at the moment, we are all stuck at home, doing it virtually, but storytelling is the same. So I would encourage us to have the next 10 minutes, wait for it, the next 10 minutes to think about how you're going to tell this story. An interesting story. Yeah, sorry, let's go back a little bit. The activity is to tell an interesting story happened this week to a colleague. So bear in mind that the keyword here is a story that happened that to a colleague. It's not a story that you tell your mom or your siblings. It's a story that you tell your colleagues. So keep your boundaries. It could be your grocery trip, because in Melbourne right now you only have an hour to go for a grocery trip. Or it could be something that it's tough that you have done. But use the same construct. The character, conflict, struggle, and go. I'll give you an example. From my perspective. How would I tell a story in this topic? An interesting story happened this week to a colleague. So this is what happened. Last Thursday, I got bombarded by a message from Stefan, who's here, and also by Andrew, who's been a friend for years. And they want me to they invite me to do a session in 4 days time to talk about communication in virtual environment. I wasn't sure because the time is very limited. It's a very tight deadline, and I don't have anything ready, and I'm not a personal trainer at all. So, but then so that was the character, okay? That was the character. But then because Andrew has been a friend for years, and I'm afraid if I don't say yes, he would not come to my party next time. So I say yes to something that I wasn't sure. So Friday, very busy with work. And then Saturday, I make up a hiking trip, because when I face a difficult task, it's just like the Christmas sock that in your drawer. It's so shiny, but you just keep pushing it to the corner, and every time you open the drawer, you see it, but you don't want to wear it. You only wear it once a week. So it's difficult. It's a difficult task. So I keep pushing it. And Saturday, I come up with a hiking trip that we didn't plan, and Sunday, even laundry has more priority. So I literally sent a reply to Stefan on 10 p.m. on Sunday. And after I discussed with my partner about my struggle, that was the struggle, okay? And then he told me that, why are you trying to be a trainer? You just be yourself. That's right, yeah, that's right. I can just be myself and share my stories, right? That's the whole point of it. And also, every time I talk to AIESECers, I enjoy it so much. And because I talk to a bunch of young leaders, and I always learn something myself as well. So here we are, almost completed the session for AIESEC. So that's a very simple story, but that tells, so imagine I tell that to a colleague, so they would know who I am, I'm part of, I used to be part of an organization called AIESEC, and it sounds awesome. And also I take up tasks that I challenge myself because of a time limit. And I also am a normal person that when faced with difficulties, I push it, but eventually I complete it. It tells something about you. So it's not a very complicated practice. So let's do that for the next, do we have time for 10 minutes? Let's 5 minutes. Can we do it 5 minutes?
We can do it 10 minutes.
You wanted to?
Yeah, 10 minutes. We have time for 10 minutes.
Okay, so 10 minutes.
Yeah.
There you are. So you're going to prepare that using the same construct. Think about it. You can choose to think about it by yourself. You don't have to talk to anyone. If you want, you can get into the room and discuss with whoever is in the room and help each other. And after this 10 minutes, any volunteer will be presenting their story, and your story needs to be under 1 minute. And we will together give you feedback, and let's improve on that. So I'll give it back to the AIESEC team.
Yeah, Cindy, just explain about the activity again.
Okay, so you guys will be divided into different breakout rooms, and you will have 10 minutes to complete the activity. So you have 2 minutes of thinking time, 1 minute to share for like each person. So you take turn, each person 1 minute to share, and then in the end you will have 2 minutes to give general feedback for each other. So just a moment. Yep.
If everyone is ready, I will send everyone to breakout room right now. I think everyone is back from the breakout room already. So I think we can start with the sharing activities.
Great. Do we have any volunteer?
Okay, I can go. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So
please do.
Okay, so Ashley and Helen from the student engagement team, last week they contacted me and they said every Friday we have a culture exchange club, but the team that will represent, they didn't prepare and they are not ready. So they contact me and say, Salim, can you present Saudi Arabia in this session this week? And it was, for me, it was short time and they have assessments. And this was the struggle. But I talked with my Saudi friends and I talked to them and we accept the challenge and we did very, very well presentation and session. I was very proud of my team and myself because it was interesting, detailed, and a lot of people learn new things about Saudi Arabia.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. In a context of people who might not know what AIESEC is, you might want to give more context in the beginning of the story, but overall it's great. And in time as well, within the time limit, which is great. Any other volunteers? I think we have time another one. We have time for another one.
One more person.
Yeah, I'll go. So my name is Pat. For my story, in preparation for this workshop, we're trying to think of a challenge to post on the Discord for after the workshop as a team. And I'm not the most creative person in the world when it comes to typing out exciting challenges and evoking emotions via written communication. So I was struggling a little bit with it. So I had to bounce a few ideas off my team leader, Harley, and my vice president, Songha, in preparation for it. And thankfully, Harley had made a post from our last workshop 2 weeks ago. So I was able to use the template for that. And I think I've been able to develop a pretty good challenge for this week. Or fingers crossed everyone enjoys it. and you'll get to see it in the Discord after the end of this workshop.
Wow, great. Love to see what is the challenge. It's not easy. Because I only share my structure on Sunday, so I don't know, you only have 2 days, which is amazing.
Okay, so now we will move on to the Q&A session. Don't be shy to unmute yourself if you have any question, or you can type in the question in the box chat and we will have a look at it. So anyone have any question? Just unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, is anyone asking?
No, you go, you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I actually have a quick question. Like, can you share one time when you have like an awkward moment during like communication between your college or any like type of communication in general, and like how did you solve it?
Yes, the awkward silence in a meeting. Yes, that happens a lot, especially when no one have the answer or no one want to say, and especially in meetings where in some cultures they don't like to challenge the leader, and when you ask a question and no one gives you an answer. Yes. I think it's really case by case, but if you know the other parties, if you know everyone well enough, you could make it more personal by sharing your thoughts first, and then inviting in a less intimidated way with others to take turn to encourage people to give in their idea by of course you need to take the first step. But if you're in a meeting where nobody knows anyone, then it's more difficult. Then that's why storytelling is important. You could relate it back to, that's why it's very common in business meeting when you're meeting the first time, you talk about the weather, because that's the only thing that you could relate to and in common. Or you could talk about recent news. That's why reading news is very important. And yes, so current affairs and sports games, and if they're into it, and all of that. Yes.
Awesome, thank you so much.
And Sima,
So
you had a problem? Yeah. Sorry, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about your journey. How did you get where you are right now as owning a business?
My journey of becoming an entrepreneur, I think I know myself. It's a journey of self-realization. So I always know that I would like to be an entrepreneur. So in the early of my career, I developed those relevant skills that I would need in order to start a business. And at some point, I just take the leap. So a career that's important, that you learn a lot about the world. I know there are other people who straight out finish their study and start their own business, and some of them are very successful as well. So everyone has their own journey, but I believe it's a self-realizing journey that I know this is what I want to do.
Thank you.
So we have another question in the box chat. Is that how do you overcome conflict in a team environment when communication is done virtually?
So this is actually a very big question, because you need to go to the root of why there is a conflict, and where is the conflict? Is it between you or with someone else? So someone who doesn't relate to you, doesn't believe in what you say, or is it between another two person in the team where you are the third person? So there are many different scenarios, but you do need to find out what is the reason for that conflict first. And then unfortunately we can't see people face to face, you can only do virtually. Then you need to talk to different individuals individually to find out what is the reason and see how you can solve that problem for them, instead of doing it in a everybody in the same meeting. So do it individually first, communicate individually to everyone who are related to this issue, and try to understand every angle of the story, and then determine what's the next step. The next step could be just get the three person who are related together to solve that problem, or you get everyone together to solve that problem. So but one-to-one communication is very important to start with in solving a conflict, to understand different angles of the story.
Yeah, I know that like many of you have a lot of questions, but unfortunately our time is up. So if you have any further questions, you can post it on our discussion forum on Discord, and we will have a chat about it. So in AIESEC, we have this culture where if we find the content or the information interesting, you can snap to show your appreciation to our guest speaker. So you can snap like this, or you can type in the box chat to show the appreciation to Ophenia today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Ophenia.
Yeah, I can see the box chat